Yo, 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 ladies and gentlemen, thank you for stopping by the channel. Appreciate it. Man, we are growing, and it's all because of you. Almost at 7,000 subscribers. That is amazing. But anyway, I was just thinking about the dumbest mayors award. Who should get that award? Should it be Karen Bass in Los Angeles? Would it be Eric Adams in New York? I'm not sure who the mayor of Atlanta is, but would it be the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson? And what about Miss Latoya Cantrell from New Orleans? And the envelope, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe it's going to be Mayor Brandon Johnson. Anyway, this man was on MSNBC, and I want you to look at their reaction. Even they don't believe what's coming out of this man's mouth. Check it out.
Let's bring into the conversation Democratic Mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, to respond to what you heard right there. Mayor Johnson, thanks for your time this morning. We appreciate it. I don't have to tell you about the generations-old problem of gun violence on the streets of Chicago. You are making some headway there just in the last couple of years. But what is your response to President Trump as he floats the idea of sending the National Guard into Chicago?
Well, good morning. First of all, a military occupation of the city of Chicago would not only be illegal, but unconstitutional and costly. The city of Chicago is not requesting that federal troops come and occupy our city. In fact, I have not heard any mayor across this country call for American troops to come and occupy our cities. Look, we're working hard every single day to drive violence down in the city of Chicago. Since I've been in office, there's been a precipitous decline in violent crime in every single category. Just this year alone, we have a 32% reduction in homicides, almost 40% reduction in shootings and shooting victims. Robberies are down nearly 35%. Carjackings are down nearly 50%. We're moving in the right direction because we're making critical investments. If this president was actually serious about driving violence down in the city of Chicago and American cities across this country, he would work with mayors to make sure that we have the necessary investments to continue to do the work that we have been doing.
Well, you've led me to my next question, Mr. Mayor, which is, if not for these troops coming into Chicago, what would a productive relationship with the Trump administration look like? If they were serious about fighting crime in the streets of Chicago, what could they offer you that would be helpful?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. First of all, he could start by restoring the over $800 million that was taken away from violence prevention efforts back in April. Look, when I first became mayor of the city of Chicago, I made multiple requests to the previous administration to invest in violence prevention. That request remains. But these are also requests that I know that are being made in Baltimore by Brandon Scott, who's doing an incredible job. Barbara Lee in Oakland, who's doing an amazing job. Karen Bass in Los Angeles. Many mayors across this country. Randall Woodfin in Birmingham, Alabama. You are seeing declines that we have not seen in a generation. In fact, just the month of April this year, 2025, it was the safest April since 1962.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to keep in mind that already in the city of Chicago, there have been 45 children. I'm going to say children because all under 19 years old, 45 dead in Chicago. Almost 300-something people have already died for gun violence, and 45 of them were children. But this man is over here talking about the crime is down. Down from what? See, these people play with words and do all kind of crazy stuff. But look what President Trump has done in D.C. President Trump went in there 11 days ago, and there hasn't been a homicide at all, none. just the presence. Now, he's talking about, Brandon Johnson is talking about military occupation. That's not what the National Guard does. The National Guards are just a presence on site. And just because they are there patrolling the streets, people are not running around shooting people and waving guns and doing all that. They're scared of the National Guard. And that's what you need, the presence. That's all they are. That's all they're doing in Washington, D.C. is just the presence has reduced all of that. So President Trump knows what he's doing, and he's already rescinded the $800 million for what? That doesn't do anything. Crime is high in these cities, and they get a lot of money and call themselves for prevention. But we already know what happens to that money. We can check with Fani Willis and see what happens to that money. That money goes into these cities for all these programs, but nothing ever changes. But anyway, check it out.
Our work is working. This president and the federal government has a responsibility to ensure that cities have the resources that they need in order to continue to drive violence down.
The president has a responsibility of making sure that the cities are safe. That's his responsibility. It has nothing to do with providing money. The president of the United States is to make sure that the cities are safe. He doesn't have to send you money, Mayor.
Down across this country.
And what programs would you want funded? What specific?
Look at their body language. Look at her and look at Joe. Look at them. Do they believe what they don't? They cannot believe what they don't believe it. Just look at their faces. They're like, what an idiot. And you know what? I'm gonna say it again. I don't believe that the people are electing these folks. I think these elections are being stolen all across the country. If you go back and look at Karen Bass, who's the mayor of Los Angeles, she's been a communist Marxist all her life. When she was 18, 19 years old, she was on that ridiculous stuff. And how did she become mayor of Los Angeles? I believe these people, they have cheated in these elections, and they put these people in. I don't think our brothers and sisters in these cities are that dumb to where they elect people like this. But anyway, let's wrap this up. But I want you to check out this segment right here and see what Joe, and I want you to look at Joe and what's her name right here and see how they look at how they looking at this question. They're going to ask him a question, and I want you to see how ridiculous this guy is.
Do you consider to be violence prevention programs?
$800 million be used for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have been working with community violence intervention workers, or CVI. These are community-led organizations that are spending time on the ground in the neighborhoods, working to squash conflict, to prevent retaliation from occurring. Look, I live on the west side of Chicago. It's the Austin neighborhood, one of the most dynamic communities in the entire city, but it has been mired in disinvestment. I'm likely the first mayor in the history of Chicago to wake up in one of the most difficult, challenging communities. And that's why not only are we investing in CVI, or our community violence intervention workers, we're also investing in youth employment. This summer alone, we hired 31,119 young people. And in the neighborhoods where youth employment was the highest, we saw the most significant decline in violence. He also can help support mental and behavioral health care services. I've reopened the 3 mental health clinics. We've expanded mental health crises workers all over the city so that...
yeah, you need to go spend the night in there, player.
When mental health crises occurs, a police officer doesn't have to show up to that scene, but we have a trained professional to be able to address these crises. The other thing that he can help us with is the federal government can help us with. I've revamped the entire detectives bureau within the city of Chicago, and now we have a clearance rate almost 77%. One of the deterrents of crime is to actually solve it, to bring closure, to bring justice. These are just a few examples that I know mayors across the country are calling for. This president and the federal government has literally declared war on poor people. I remember a time when presidents declared war on poverty. The federal government has a moral responsibility to do unto the least of these. And that's what we're doing in the city of Chicago.
So let me ask you, Mr. Mayor, those all sound like great programs. I'm curious, would you also like to get federal funding to help put 5,000 more cops on the street in Chicago? Would that help drive down crime?
Well, look, policing by itself is not the full strategy.
No, I understand that. You've talked about the other things you want, and I said those are good and important programs, but I'm asking also, would 5,000 more police officers on the street in Chicago be helpful to go along with all of those social programs?
Now, notice the question. Joe's not asking him about the National Guard. He asking the mayor, would 5,000 more police officers on the streets be helpful in preventing crime? And listen to this bullshit. Listen.
A lot of cities are engaging in and having success with.
Well, look, here's the best way I can put it, Joe, is that in the 90s when I was in high school, we had 3,000 more police officers and we had 900 people being murdered every single year in Chicago. It's just not policing alone. Of course, we want more detectives.
I know it's not policing alone, but I know it's not policing alone. You've told me everything else you want. I'm curious, and this does come down to an ideological difference between people. Do you believe that the streets of Chicago would be safer if there were more uniformed police officers on the streets of Chicago?
I believe the city of Chicago and cities across America would be safer if we actually had, affordable housing. Look,
okay,
I'm not saying that
that's not the question I asked. My question is, and I just need a yes or a no, do you believe the streets of Chicago would be safer if you got all of those other extraordinary programs put back into place, which do have a history of being successful, if that's complemented by having 5,000 more cops on the streets of Chicago?
I don't believe that we should narrow it down to just police officers, Joe, is what I'm saying. That is an antiquated approach. I'm saying we've invested in detectives.
Mr. Mayor, are you hearing what I'm saying? I'm agreeing with you that all of these other social programs are extraordinarily important. I just need a yes or a no, and then this will be the last time I ask. If you get all of those other social programs that 800 million that New York City does, Los Angeles, other people do with great success, would an additional 5,000 cops on the streets in Chicago help complement those programs to make Chicago safer?
Look, we are working hard to make sure that our police department is fully supported. I don't believe that just simply putting out an arbitrary number around police officers is the answer. What I'm saying is policing and affordable housing. It's policing and mental and behavioral health care services. It's policing and youth employment. It's a full package. Of course, we want to make sure that our police department is fully supported. That's why I've invested in our Detectives Bureau, because what we have seen in the city of Chicago, when we solve crime, it acts and serves as a deterrent. It's policing and all of the other efforts that we're doing. Here's the last thing that I'll say to that. The federal government could work stronger to coordinate with my police department to get guns off the streets of Chicago. We've seen these coordination efforts work just a couple of weeks ago.
So now this big dummy, Lord have mercy. People, we have got to change. These Democrats, they have to go. We need to be interviewing these people. With these elections coming up, we need to get rid of these people. This is ridiculous. How dumb can you get? Man, the man asked you one question. Would another 5,000 police officers help? He said, okay, we agree with all the other stuff. But if we put 5,000 more police officers on the street, would that help to get rid of the crime, bring crime? See, President Trump is about getting rid of crime. Period. He shut crime down almost in D.C. But these people here, if it reduces by 2, then they okay. Then they brag. But still 300 people how many people got shot this weekend? 5 people died this weekend and 27 was shot. That's the average weekend in Chicago. That's crazy. This man is a joke.
ATF, working with my police department, we removed over 150 guns off the streets of Chicago that were trafficked in through Mississippi and Indiana. No one is saying that police officers don't play an incredible role in driving safety. They play an absolute pivotal role in that. But we have asked law enforcement to do too much. Police officers are being asked to be social workers, counselors. What I'm simply saying is, if we're going to build safe and affordable cities across America, the one thing that safe communities all have in common, they invest in people. We have a poverty issue in the city of Chicago and cities across America. Police officers alone will not put food on the table. Police officers alone will not guarantee a high quality education. Police officers alone won't drive down unemployment. We need all of it. The President of the United States of America and the federal government could restore Medicaid. They could restore SNAP. They could stop defunding our public education system. Here's the most important point here. Justice Brandeis, over 100 years ago, the first Jewish American to sit on the Supreme Court, he said that we could either have a democracy or wealth in the hands of the concentrated few. He said, but we cannot have both. We are fighting for our democracy and our humanity right now. This president's nescience of the Constitution will leave irrevocable harm on posterity. That's why, as mayor of the city of Chicago, we are standing up to tyranny, and American cities across this country are doing the same.
Well, I agree, Mike, and we've talked for endlessly over the past several weeks months about Medicaid cuts disproportionately hurting the poor, while tax cuts disproportionately help the richest billionaires and multinational corporations. Same with SNAP.
Now, all of that stuff that they're talking about now, that has not happened under President Trump. President Trump has not cut Medicaid, Medicare, any of those things. He's gotten rid of the waste. And President Trump is on TV while they're over here talking to this idiot. President Trump is on TV on the other station telling us everything that he's doing. President Trump has had 7 cabinet meetings. All of them have been public. And one thing that I noticed, President Trump, they pray before they have a meeting. But anyway, this mayor, this guy, Brandon Johnson, and right before him was Lori Lightfoot. Chicago is screaming for help, and I pray that y'all get it. But anyway, I'm your host, Big Al. Appreciate you dropping in. Let's pray for Chicago. Let's pray that President Trump send the troops in and clean it up, and clean up Los Angeles and some of these, probably Memphis and New Orleans too. While I'm talking, my home state. But ladies and gentlemen, President Trump is committed to cleaning up crime and shutting it down, and that's what we want to do instead of spending and throwing away a lot of money. But anyway, Brandon Johnson is a joke. Hit that like button, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace. Can't touch this.
Real. Post that gal on the mic, UncleCoon in the house. Drop the knowledge, speak truth, no room for doubt. From debates to celebs, we cover it all. Tune in, hit subscribe, you don't want to miss the call. Real. Now UncleCoon, bringing the heat. Every episode's fire, can't be beat. Hit that like, share the vibe. Join the fam, come along for the ride. Politics, pop culture, and everything between. Big Al's got the scoop, you know what I mean? From Harris to Trump, we break it down. Common sense talk, the best show around. Real. Al UncleCoon, bringing the heat. Every episode's fire, can't be beat. Hit that like, share the vibe. Join the fam, come along for the ride. Cash App shows some love, support the grind. Big Al's on the rise, one of a kind. UncleCoon podcast, the place to be for real talk, real folks, and real TV. Real Al, UncleCoon, bringing the heat. Every episode's fire, can't be beat. Hit that like, share the vibe. Join the fam, come along for the ride.